And welcome to this edition of The Mighty. This is Ben Meiselas, joined by my brothers Brett and Jordy. I have to say, I get a lot of requests to take various interviews, but a request that came up over and over again is you gotta get Marie Gluesenkamp Peréz on the podcast. She is running for Washington's 3rd congressional district. And I got two reasons for the request. On the one hand, there was everyone saying, Marie's incredible. She's a 5th generation Washingtonian. We know about her auto shop right here in the Portland area, and she's an incredible candidate. So I got a lot of requests saying that. And I also got a lot of requests saying the person who Marie's running against, Joe Kent, is a MAGA extremist who is an election denier, who claims Antifa's running around everywhere, and that's why there shouldn't be any economic investment in Washington 3rd congressional district. You put out a video. We have so much to talk about, but Marie Gluesenkamp Peréz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am running on jet fuel here. It's really great to see all of you. Thank you.
And so one of the things that you are also running on, in addition to jet fuel, is this idea of normalcy and moderation. You were endorsed by the former congresswoman or the current congresswoman, but who was defeated in the primaries by a combination of you and Joe Kent, the MAGA extremist. Then you're running on that moderation. Can you talk about why that's so important in Washington's 3rd?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think we're all frankly just really tired of just the division. I think we're really tired of feeling like we have to look at somebody's bumper sticker before we pull over and help them on the side of the road. I think that's just a really impoverished version of what it used to mean to live in a community in America. This is a very light red purple district, and representing this district is, that's what it means, is to work right down the middle and provide substantive, improvement of people's lives, not this kind of frothy clickbait politics that we see all over the place.
And, Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler, who currently represents Washington's 3rd, many of our viewers and listeners will remember from the January 6th committee. She was one of the courageous Congress members, I think, who had reached out to Kevin McCarthy right away and said, what the hell is going on here? We need help. And McCarthy was like, well, Trump's telling me, everyone, it's like a famous line with Butler calling, and McCarthy's like, well, Trump's saying it's Antifa. It's actually not insurrectionists. And so there's nothing that we can do. And really, it's kind of on that basis that she just said, look, insurrections are bad. We shouldn't have insurrections in this country, and we should have free and fair elections, that she drew Kent and this MAGA extremist challenger to take her out to spread conspiracies. Do I have the history somewhat right there of how we get Kent?
Right. Yeah, she was one of the 10 Republicans who voted to impeach Trump the second time. And then it was a crazy primary with there were 10 people running at one point, and they were all trying to out MAGA each other. And my opponent, Joe Kent, was the one who did get Trump's endorsement and has been leading that bandwagon here. It's, he's had Proud Boys on his staff. He's been out talking about banning all immigration for 20 years. And he said to reestablish a white majority. I mean, this guy is beyond the pale of anything we've seen in the Northwest. This guy is the most extreme candidate we've ever seen. And so it's really out of step with this district, which is a moderate district. Now, it's Brian Baird, Jaime Herrera Beutler, and I will tell you the craziest thing that just happened. We were at a debate on KGW, and he's telling us that we should have machine guns. We've banned machine guns since 1934. He says that any weapon the military has, citizens should have. So where does that end? Are we talking about surface to air missiles? Are we talking about tactical nukes? Are we gonna have GoFundMes to buy? It's just crazy. Jeez. It's crazy.
But the answer to your question there, for him, if you were to ask him those questions at the debate, because essentially he will answer those questions. Yes, he literally is I believe, and this is hard to say because there's a lot of dangerous extremist candidates in this election. And here on MeidasTouch, we just talk about moderation, normal, exhausted majority. But Joe Kent may be the most extremist anywhere in the country, and he's running in Washington's third. So I have to play this video that your campaign put out, which is Joe's greatest hits, because everything that you just said, and this is what we do at MeidasTouch, we always show the videos and the statements that verify that that's actually what was said. So I got to play Joe's greatest hits, a video your campaign put out, and then I want to talk to you about it.
I have my issues with the way the last election went. It was stolen. It was rigged. We are in a war with the left. We are in a war with the establishment, too.
The national security state has been weaponized against us at the behest of the progressive left and the globalists.
I don't think there's anything wrong with there being a, white people, special interest group.
The blame for what happened on January 6th, none of this is on President Trump.
I mean, it reeks of an absolute intelligence operation.
I 100% support Roe versus Wade being overturned. I would move to have a national ban on abortion. Privatize a high-interest, tax-free savings plan that's managed on the private sector on Wall Street is a much better option for Social Security.
The folks in Congress right now, like Matt Gaetz, I think has been absolutely unapologetic. Marjorie Taylor Greene's another one. She's a great fighter.
We have to realize that we're at war. Bringing the national security state to heel must be our top priority.
We're going to go after AG Garland, impeaching Joe Biden.
We are in very dangerous waters right now, unprecedented. We've never been here before.
I mean, wow, I'm left speechless after seeing that, which is also one of the reasons why I had to get you on this podcast. I had to talk to you. So when you see that, what's your message to voters in Washington's third?
Take him seriously. Take him seriously. This is not a game. I mean, this guy's dad was one of the lawyers on the Ruby Ridge case. This is somebody that is very serious about pointing our country towards civil war. He says it there. He believes we're at war. And, I think that we've been entirely too sanguine about where our democracy is headed towards. We did not take them seriously enough when they said they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade. And here we are, millions of women are suffering because of that. This is a crisis, and it's time for us to get in the ring and fight for this.
And then he takes that extremism and dangerous at a federal level, dangerous at a state level, dangerous at a local level, and economically very harmful, because his views, for example, is that a light rail between Portland and Vancouver, Washington, on a new badly needed I-5 replacement bridge is a plot to bring Antifa into the district. And because of all of these conspiracies, he literally wants to turn his back on bringing economic opportunities into the district and into the area. I mean,
and not only that, I mean, one of the other things he says is that he will defund our police departments because he doesn't like the laws they're enforcing. That is tyranny. That is tyranny. We elect our local governments, and to have somebody pull the purse strings like that is crazy. He talks about defunding Oregon and Washington because he doesn't like their immigration policies. But it is wild. And, there are 39 vacancies in the Clark County Sheriff's Department right now. And Joe Kent's talking about making it worse because he's worried about light rail. What in the actual heck is going on?
Wow. And let's tell us a little about yourself.
I
want to know about you, your background, running for Washington's third. Did I butcher anything in the introduction about your background?
No. Oh yeah. So I live in rural Skamania County, get my water from a well, get my internet from a radio tower. I'd probably be the only member of Congress that doesn't have broadband at home. But for a living, my husband and I, we own an auto repair and a machine shop. So we're an independent shop, which is kind of a dying breed. We're not affiliated with any dealership. And so we're out there doing our thing, work on all kinds of cars, a lot of older cars. And I think that's the really interesting thing, because it's you are seeing middle America every day. You're seeing people who are struggling to pay the bill to have their catalytic converter replaced. You're seeing people who have had their windows smashed. You're seeing people who are just trying to get one more year out of a Honda Civic that's, already at, 450,000. And I think we need to have a Congress that looks like America, that understands what we're facing. And for me, I think like part and parcel of that is being a mom. I have a 15-month-old, and like any new parent will tell you, getting a spot in a daycare right now it's a blood sport. Like 1 in 10 childcare facilities has shut down permanently in America since 2019. And so we bring our baby to work with us because that's the option that's available to us. And like, that's a position of privilege to be able to take your kid in. And it sucks. Like having a toddler in an auto shop is like, it's frankly kind of a nightmare. But that is the reality for so many working moms, for so many small businesses trying to navigate these issues.
And the reality is that you're actually somebody who understands the struggle of working class families. And I feel like that's so important right now as families are facing issues like higher prices out there. So what would taking those learnings, taking your firsthand experiences, what would your priorities be to help these people with, lowering costs and whatnot, should you get into Congress?
Yeah, I think that I kind of think of these things like this has been a long arc in getting us here. We've had a long, couple decades of losing American jobs, losing like factories being offshored. And I will tell you, I see this in the automotive industry, just like a deterioration of the parts that are available, like aftermarket parts have gotten crappier and crappier, and that hits the middle class first. And it's just this slow sort of bankruptcy of our assets. We have so many homes being bought up by investment firms, not being bought up by first-time home buyers. We have so what we've also seen. I think we're all kind of in the generation where we've seen the best trade schools, like for instance, like Benson, getting turned into computer programming schools. Which, the thing about trades jobs is they can never be offshored. They are family wage jobs. Like you're not going to be able to hire an electrician in China to like wire in a heat pump. Right. And they're part and parcel of like the green economy, right? Like it's a carpenter, it's somebody putting spray foam insulation in your house. It's new windows. It's all those things. And so it's going to take us time to work ourselves back into an economy that is like operating from a position of strength that has inherent value in it. And that's going to mean investing in trade programs. I think one of the biggest linchpins of that is, for me, one of the things I'm excited about working on is right now Pell Grants can only be used for 2- and 4-year colleges. They need to be available for apprenticeship programs too. We need to support more trades, and that slow growth in the economy is what's going to get us back to a position of strength.
And so in addition to supporting the working class, in addition to lowering costs, one of the things on voters' minds I know is safety and crime. And I just want to reiterate some of the things that we spoke about already during this interview. Your extremist opponent came out in support of legalizing machine guns and any weapon in the U.S. military. He wants that to all be available all on the streets of our cities and our towns. He wants to defund the police department. He spends his time attacking the FBI, lying about what happened on January 6th. So what is your message to families who are concerned about safety, knowing that your extremist opponent literally wants to put machine guns on the street?
Yeah, Joe Kent wants to defund the police. That is what he's talking about. He's talking about, he has this idea of like constitutional sheriffs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it is what little like fiefdoms look like. They this belief that the sheriff is the highest elected official in an area, and it's terrifying. It is not what a safe America looks like. And I will tell you, like, I mean, we talked about catalytic converters, and that's not the sort of bleeding edge of crime that makes the headlines. But, so what's going on with catalytic converter theft is that there's about $30 of platinum and a catalytic converter on a car. Thousands of them have been stolen, like tens of thousands across our region. People are melting them down, basically. And that's a $1,300 bill to replace a catalytic converter. And that is eviscerating so many people's emergency funds. And like, we don't have a Congress that cares about that. We don't have Joe Kent doesn't care about that. He doesn't understand what that means. The organization that addresses organized crime is the FBI. That's what the FBI does, is organized crime, child predators. Joe Kent wants to defund them. That's not going to make our communities safer. You can have a machine gun all you want all day long. That's not going to fix the low-level crime that is hurting our communities.
That's why it's so important that we have people in Congress like you who are of a working class background, who actually have real world experience, aren't just like billionaires who don't understand what's actually going on. It's one of the interesting things has been watching the dynamic between Kevin McCarthy and Joe Kent. It's one of the most bizarre things to see from the outside, because they've famously butted heads. But, recently Kevin McCarthy has come around to Joe Kent. And the fascinating thing that I saw is McCarthy just held a fundraiser for Joe Kent in your state. And like, neither of them wanted to speak about it. Like, both of them like tried to kind of hide that it even happened. They posted one picture about it on social media, would not speak to the media, would not answer any questions, would not say what happened. Why do you think they both are kind of wanting to hide their association with each other? It's just a weird thing.
Yeah. Well, I think McCarthy wants credibility in Joe's circles of the MAGA extremists. And so I think that was probably a pretty carefully navigated agreement. And Joe's, his funding, listen, he spent the entire primary bashing the Republican establishment, and now turns out he needs their help to actually get elected. He, ran around with, basically, like, right after the primary, like, he was running around with Jamie's head, the incumbent Republican he unseated, how proud he was about that work. And I'm going to tell you, like, a lot of moderate Republicans were not thanking him for that, because now they're going to have to vote for a Democrat. Yeah. But that is the crazy thing too, I would say, on campaign finance. Like, just as like a normal person running for Congress, like, that is the crazy thing. You realize how much money these things take, and like, I run a business, it's like we've got 8 employees. Like, I understand that it takes money to do stuff. Right. It's a 6-bay shop, but then you get into the scale of like a federal campaign and you understand the insanity of our campaign finance. Like, it is bananas. And early on, I made the choice, like, not to take corporate PAC checks, because it's important that our representatives are accountable. But it is very deeply concerning, having gotten a closer view into campaign finance. And so I will make this pitch, like, listeners out there, like, I have no trust fund. Like, this is a grassroots campaign. And if you're able to chip in, it still does make a big difference.
Yeah, please do that. I mean, we're going up against just such crazy amounts of dark money, all these billionaires coming out of the woodworks to fund these campaigns. Like, I think people get it to some extent, but I still don't think they fully understand just how corrupt that whole process is. So your small dollar donations go a really long way. One of the things I've been impressed about watching you is you've seemed to really be able to break through to rural voters in the country. And I feel like rural voters often feel neglected by the Democratic Party. So what would your advice be just to the Democratic Party at large on how to reach these voters who think the Democratic Party has not been speaking to them for these past few years?
Democrats need to stop explaining things to rural voters. Like, it is so pedantic and like offensive. Like, we know stuff they don't know. Sure, they know stuff we don't know. But I've had this experience of, higher electeds, like, you need to go in and listen to a community. You can't come in and just explain things all the time. Like, there needs to be a lot more humbleness when you come into a community, and not this like prescriptive, like, oh, I'm here to help you. You need to understand what's going on in our communities. What do we think the solutions are? Like, I am the second candidate ever nominated in the 3rd congressional district that's not from Clark County. That's just like a huge lack of representation for the interests of rural communities. And I think we're all just really tired of being told what, we just kind of get pat on the head all the time and told, like, oh, you don't understand these things. Right. And we've got to do better. Yeah.
I saw you fire off a tweet about this, so I wanted to get your take here as well. So your opponent refers to the January 6th insurrectionists as political prisoners. Meanwhile, on that day, 5 police officers died as a result of that day. So when you can't condone the death of cops by insurrectionists, I mean, what does that say about one's moral compass and their ability to lead?
Yeah, I mean that was horrifying, and he's like doing this like weaselly evasion. He's like, well, they didn't die that day. I'm like, what are you taught? They like, that's the problem is like when you condone political violence when it's in service of your team, like that's exactly what you said. Like there's no moral compass there. That is a huge problem. Like there needs to be an unwavering standard of what's acceptable in political dialogue, and we have just completely gone off the rails.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you've hit on this sort of throughout this, but I wanted to ask it more pointedly. What are some issues at Washington's third that you would like to focus on in that office that doesn't get sort of the national attention, but are really important to your constituents?
Well, we are one of the districts, like so much paper and cardboard used to come, so much, lumber. And like where I live in Skamania County, we butt up against the Gifford Pinchot. And we were 5 years ago, we were about 7 miles from the Eagle Creek wildfire. This year we were 2 miles from the Nakia Creek wildfire. Like it's getting closer and closer and closer. And there's just a lack of urgency in addressing the broader climate change drivers of wildfire and also the practical reality on the ground. Like the woods are a hot mess. And it's been such a political football, I think from all sides without a real addressing of like the actual health of the woods. Like we need real investments in prescribed burns and thinning projects. Like that's just not happening enough. And I think this is important because another like issue, I think that a lot of us are starting to become aware of are microplastics. Like there's microplastics everywhere. They're in our shellfish. They're in our waters. Like they're in our bodies, and they have real impacts. And one of the drivers of microplastics is like overabundance of plastic packaging. And the solution to plastic packaging is paper and cardboard, like we used to have. And so I think there's a real symbiotic opportunity here between support for the paper and cardboard industry in Southwest Washington and getting plastics out of our waste stream. And that is something that I'd love to champion as a member of Congress.
That's awesome. And then pivoting really quickly to some more of those national issues, what does a vote for Marie Gluesenkamp Peréz mean for Social Security, for abortion, for Medicare? Yeah,
I am going to work my tail off to ensure that our rights to healthcare are federally protected. That is critical. We cannot assume that our rights are protected in Washington State and Oregon right now, either place, because like take these people seriously. Like Joe Kent will enact a national ban on abortion. That is his stated goal. He's talked about lowering the age of retirement. And this is just like this sort of frog level reasoning, right? His idea is that because people are living longer, we can increase the age of retirement. White collar workers are living longer. Blue collar workers like my family and I are not living longer. So when you increase the age of retirement, we're the ones paying for their extra vacation time, and it's just like thievery, And so I will work to enact actual solvency reform and Social Security. Hot topic in our, I know that's a hot topic in our demographic, but it's something that we have to address because we're going to be the ones holding the bag on that if we don't.
Absolutely. And so I know you did the pitch earlier, but I'd love for you to do it one more time, even more specific. So we're only a handful of days away. What's the best way for folks to get involved with your campaign? How can they help? Where should they go?
Yes, please come door knock. Please come door knock. We need your help door knocking. You can do that on my website, marieforcongress.com/volunteer. We need your help door knocking. This matters. Turnout matters. And let me just say, like a lot of the older door knockers who used to, like they were old, old hands at this, they were experienced. They're afraid of COVID and they're not coming out to volunteer. We need younger people to show up and door knock. We've got to do more rural radio buys. We've got to be doing more texting programs, and that takes money. So if you can chip in $5, $50, whatever it is, it is not too late to have a big impact, because these voters who haven't voted yet are the undecideds. These are the people who are deciding which way this election is going to go. So it's even more imperative that we communicate with them. So you can also make that contribution online.
Folks, these elections have consequences, and you could be the difference maker in these races. You have to believe these extremists when they tell you who they are. Yeah. And I got to say, it's always such a pleasure to speak to a candidate, not about conspiracy theories about the past and trying to overturn previous elections, but about actual solutions for the future, for people. I think everybody should want to elect somebody who is actually working in the interests of the people in how to improve their lives. Marie Gluesenkamp Peréz, thank you so much for coming on this episode of the MeidasTouch podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure. I'm so grateful to all of you. Thank you.
And everybody go right now. That's marieforcongress.com to donate. And if you want to volunteer, marieforcongress.com/volunteer. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the MeidasTouch podcast.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.